No update. No, just felt a little something in her groin, so we'll get it evaluated and see what happens from there.
Yeah, just kind of to follow up on that, looked like she was kind of grabbing at her right groin area. Is that the concern?
Yeah, if that's the one she was grabbing at, I don't know which one it was, but yeah, I mean, that's it.
You know what's fascinating about basketball? Sometimes the most revealing moments happen when you dig past the surface narratives everyone's talking about. Over the past week, we got 3 games that perfectly illustrate why looking at just wins and losses can be completely misleading. The Indiana Fever beat the Las Vegas Aces without Caitlin Clark, then beat Chicago in a game where the Sky only had 8 players available, and then Chicago lost to Washington despite getting Angel Reese back from injury. 3 games that, on the surface, look like simple stories, but dig deeper and you'll find that the conventional wisdom about these teams might be completely wrong. I'm going to break down what these games actually reveal about each team's real situation, why the normal hot takes miss the point entirely, and what we should actually be paying attention to.
After the game, I had some pain and then, got an MRI, and that kind of gave me the result that I didn't want to see, but, those type of things don't lie, so, yeah. I think the medical team has done a really good job of, doing my rehab every single day.
And if this kind of deep dive basketball analysis is what you're here for, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It really helps the algorithm push this content to other people who actually want to understand the game beyond the box scores. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because we're just getting started with this type of analysis. So let me set the stage for what actually happened this week because the context changes everything. Most people saw Indiana beat Chicago 93-78 and thought, see, Indiana is just better. But here's what that take completely misses. Chicago only had 8 players available for that game. 8. They had 5 players out due to various injuries. When you're down to the absolute minimum roster size, you're not really playing basketball anymore. You're just trying to survive. No bench depth, no substitution patterns, guys playing way more minutes than they should. Think about what that actually means. Your starters are playing 35 plus minutes each. There's no real rotation. And if someone gets in foul trouble or needs a breather, you're in serious trouble. You can't run normal defensive schemes because you don't have the bodies to rotate. You can't push pace because guys get tired. Every possession becomes about conservation rather than execution. That's not a fair test of anything organizational or systematic. It's a testament to just showing up and competing when the odds are stacked against you. Meanwhile, Indiana's win over Las Vegas, that happened with Caitlin Clark still out with her groin injury, her 12th missed game this season. A'ja Wilson had been averaging 31.7 points over a 3-game winning streak, and Vegas came in looking like they were hitting their stride. Then Chicago gets Angel Reese back from injury against Washington, and everyone expected some kind of bounce-back performance. Instead, they lose by 17 to a Mystics team that's been inconsistent all season. So we've got 3 very different situations that tell us 3 very different things. Let's break down what each one actually means. Let's start with what Indiana showed us, because I think people are drawing the wrong conclusions from their week. Thursday night against Vegas was genuinely impressive. This is a team that's won 2 of the last 3 championships, and Indiana beat them 80-70 without their best player.
But also, let's take a moment for KK, okay? She's that moment today. She's that girl always. Thank you.
Kelsey Mitchell led with 21 points, but the real story was the complete team effort. Natasha Howard had 18 points and 13 rebounds on efficient shooting. Aaliyah Boston added 13 and 10. Sophie Cunningham chipped in 15 points on perfect 3-point shooting. But here's what really caught my attention. A'ja Wilson, who had been averaging over 31 points in that winning streak, was held to 20 points on 7 of 17 shooting. That's not about individual matchups, that's about having a defensive plan and executing it when your primary weapon isn't available. How did they do it? They forced Wilson away from her preferred spots with early double teams, made her work for position, and had help coming from different angles. When she did get good looks, they contested without fouling. It wasn't just one player stopping her, it was coordinated team defense that requires everyone to be on the same page.
Congratulations, Eastern Conference Player of the Week.
The game flow makes it even more interesting. Vegas actually took a 41-35 halftime lead after outscoring Indiana 23-17 in the second quarter. The Aces closed that half on a 12-2 run, and at that point, you're thinking maybe the lack of Clark would finally catch up to them. Indiana's response was what impressed me most. They started the second half on a 10-4 run to tie the game, then outscored Vegas 27-15 in the third quarter. During that stretch, they were moving the ball crisply. 13 assists on 18 made baskets in the first half suggests they weren't just relying on individual creation. When Lexi Hull and Mitchell hit back-to-back threes to extend the lead, it came off ball movement and screens, not isolation plays.
If you could steal a move from a teammate, which one would it be?
Teammate, I would say Nelissa Smith. She got this thing when she spin, she got like a shimmy a little bit, and she got a fake. But I'm left-handed. She right-handed, so it looks better for right-handed with her fake.
Now, here's some context that makes this interesting. Mitchell is the only Indiana player remaining from the last Fever team to beat the Aces in 2019. This franchise had lost 16 straight games to Vegas before this season. Now they've beaten them twice this year. Does that prove they've fundamentally changed how they approach basketball? Not necessarily. Maybe it's just favorable matchups, or maybe Vegas isn't as dominant as they used to be. But it does suggest that Indiana can compete with championship-level teams when things are clicking for them. Whether that's sustainable or just a hot stretch, we'll find out over time. The Chicago game 3 days later doesn't tell us much about Indiana beyond what we already knew. They can beat a severely undermanned opponent. With Chicago down to 8 players, Mitchell going for 35 points was more about individual brilliance than systematic excellence. So what should we actually take from Indiana's week? I think it's this. They appear to be getting solid production from their current roster when healthy. They're showing they can play winning basketball with this group, at least in the short term.
Excellent passing season as well. Her assist numbers. Oh no, Caitlin Clark has yet. So Ryan Howard picks up the foul. She had on her shoulders coming into the ankle roll one more time, right? That's rookie seasons and WNBA history.
But here's the big question mark that nobody's talking about. Clark has missed 12 games this season due to various injuries. For a team supposedly built around her, that's a lot. And honestly, they haven't been consistently dominant without her all season. This week might be the exception rather than the rule. The real test will be whether Clark can fit back into what they've built while she's been out, or if her return disrupts the chemistry they've developed. That's not a given. We've seen this story before in sports. Star players coming back from extended absences often struggle to mesh with what the team has become in their absence. Think about it. Mitchell has been the primary ball handler and shot creator. Boston has found her rhythm in the offense. Role players like Cunningham have stepped into larger roles. When Clark comes back, do those players easily slide back into smaller roles? Does the ball movement we saw against Vegas continue, or does everything start running through Clark again? There's also the conditioning factor. Clark has been out for weeks with this groin injury. Even when she's medically cleared, game shape is different from practice shape. How long does it take her to get back to her normal impact level? The medical evaluation on Clark showed no additional injuries, but they're being cautious with her return. That's probably smart. They're winning without her right now, so why rush back your most important player and risk making the injury worse? But it does raise questions about their long-term ceiling. If you can't count on your best player being available consistently, how high can you actually climb? Now let's talk about Chicago, because I think the narrative around them is completely backwards. Everyone saw them lose to Washington 103-86 and thought, see, even with Reese back, they can't win. But that take ignores everything about what's actually happening with this team. First, the injury context. They had 5 players out for the Indiana game, leaving them with just 8 available players. That's not a roster, that's a pickup game. You can't evaluate any team's systems or development when they're that shorthanded.
Rivalry or not between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, people tune into this game. They want to see those two on the court going up against one another. But unfortunately, in this game, neither of them played. So Caitlin Clark is obviously out indefinitely with injury.
Against Washington, they got Angel Reese back from her back injury, and she put up her typical numbers: 22 points and 13 rebounds in 32 minutes, extending her double-double streak. But Washington's rookies, Sonia Citron with 28 points and Kiki Iriafen with 22, both had career nights. Here's what's interesting about that. Washington shot 51% from the field with 16 assists on 20 made baskets in the first half alone. That's beautiful basketball from a team that's been inconsistent all season. The game flow tells a story too. Washington led by 8 at half, extended it to 19 in the third quarter, and when Chicago made a late push to cut it to 8, Washington immediately responded with back-to-back three-point plays. Now, what does this actually tell us about Chicago? Honestly, not as much as people think. They're clearly dealing with more than just on-court development issues. They're dealing with basic roster availability problems. Here's what I think is really happening with Chicago, and it's more complicated than the simple "they're bad" narrative. They're a young team trying to build something while dealing with constant injury disruptions all season long. This isn't just about this week. They've been dealing with players in and out of the lineup consistently, which makes it nearly impossible to develop chemistry and systems. You need consistent lineups to build trust, timing, and understanding of where teammates will be in different situations. It's hard to develop chemistry and systems when you can't field a consistent lineup. The fact that they were down to 8 players for a nationally televised game tells you something about their injury management, their depth, or both. Reese puts up numbers, leading the league in rebounding, consistently getting double-doubles. But individual statistics don't automatically translate to team success, especially when the supporting structure keeps changing due to injuries. The question with Chicago isn't whether their young players are talented enough, it's whether they can stay healthy long enough to actually develop as a unit. You can't build team chemistry from a hospital bed. And let's be honest about their situation. They're 7-18. They've lost 6 straight games, and they're basically out of playoff contention. At this point, the season becomes about individual development and seeing what they have for the future. With the trade deadline approaching on August 7th, they face some real decisions. Do they try to add veteran pieces to help now? Do they focus on getting their young players healthy and developing? Or do they start thinking about next season entirely? The answer probably depends on what they're seeing in practice that we're not seeing in games. Are their young players getting better in ways that don't show up in box scores? Are they building good habits even if the wins aren't coming? So after all this, what should we actually take away from these 3 games? For Indiana, the Vegas win suggests they can compete with elite teams when things are working. That's significant regardless of whether it's sustainable. The question is whether they can maintain this level when Clark returns, and whether they can stay healthy enough to make a real playoff push. For Chicago, the week mostly confirmed what we already knew. They're dealing with more challenges than just on-court execution. Injury management, roster depth, and basic availability are all issues. The Washington loss doesn't tell us much beyond that. The broader lesson here might be that we're too quick to judge teams based on individual games or even short stretches. Indiana's good week doesn't prove they've figured everything out, and Chicago's struggles don't prove they're hopeless. What's more interesting is the different challenges each team faces. Indiana is trying to maximize a current opportunity while managing injury concerns with their best player. Chicago is trying to develop young talent while dealing with basic roster availability issues. Neither situation is simple, and neither has obvious solutions. Indiana's success could evaporate if Clark can't stay healthy. Chicago's struggles could continue until they can field consistent lineups. Look, here's my honest assessment. This week illustrated how misleading surface-level analysis can be. Indiana beating Vegas was genuinely impressive and suggests they can compete when healthy. Their win over Chicago was meaningless given the circumstances. Chicago losing to Washington doesn't tell us much we didn't already know about their challenges. The real issue isn't their talent level, it's whether they can stay healthy long enough to develop as a team. The lesson here isn't about which team is better or worse, it's about understanding context before drawing conclusions. Indiana showed they can compete with elite teams when things are clicking. Chicago showed they're still dealing with basic roster management issues. Both teams have questions to answer over the rest of the season. For Indiana, can they stay healthy and maintain this level? For Chicago, can they get healthy and start building something sustainable? Right now, we're just watching 2 teams deal with very different challenges. And maybe that's more interesting than trying to rank them against each other. What do you think? Are we too quick to judge teams based on short stretches instead of understanding their actual situations? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more analysis that digs past the surface narratives, make sure to subscribe.